Hello, historians. Welcome back. All right, so remember when we left our fine young country? We left around the 1860s, and there was some trouble going on, right? Remember we talked about the abolitionist movement, which were people who were opposed to slavery, and the suffragist movement, which were people who wanted women to have the right to vote. So there was tension going on in our country at that time, and during that time in our country, the North and the South of the United States were divided. So the North and South were divided. But what I mean by divided is they had different views about what should and should not happen. Okay? So what happened is this led up to a civil war. And what a civil war is a war within a country. So this is when your own country is fighting amongst themselves. Okay, so this is a war within a country, as opposed to like different countries. Like in the past, we've talked about how the United States went to war with like Britain, for example. So a civil war is when the country is at war with itself. And that's where we are now. Okay, so we're going to talk today about some of the causes leading up to this. And in the prior video, you saw some of those causes. So I'm going to just highlight just one section up here. And then I'm going to make one thin column over on this side. And then with this part, I'm going to break it in half. So I'm going to end up with 3 unequal columns, but that's okay because you'll see what we're doing here. All right, so what we're going to do is, let's see, I am going to have the North. So in this column, we're going to have the views of the North. And then in this column, we're going to have the views and opinions of the South. And you're going to see how they're very different, which was causing a lot of this tension. All right, so first off, slavery was a huge deal, right? We had our abolitionist movement, remember? And the North did not support slavery. The North did not support slavery. Now, when I talk about the North, Maverick, when I talk about the North, I'm talking about most people in the North. Now, there were still some people who had slaves in the North, but most people did not support anyone having slaves. Okay. Now, in the South, you know, a lot of times when you learn about history, you think everybody in the South had slaves, and that wasn't really true. Most people actually did not have slaves, but it was accepted as a way of life in the South. So most people didn't have slaves, but they were like, we need slaves, and we're going to talk about this. They depended on slavery for social and economic and political reasons. Economic, squeezing that in there, and political reasons. So even though not everyone had slaves in the South, they were kind of like either okay with it or they just kind of turned and pretended they didn't notice it. All right, so let's talk about cultural reasons. So cultural is like our day-to-day stuff. All right, so the cultural, so in the North, it was more urban. Now, there were still farms in the North. It wasn't just farms, but 8 out of the 10 big cities were located in the North. So that was a big contributing factor. Okay. There were still plenty of farms here, but it was more urban. Where in the South, it was more rural. So there were still some big cities, but there were also farms and homes. And we're going to talk a little bit in our next box down here about the big farms that were located in the South called plantations. So let's go ahead and get to that. I'm going to draw my line, and we're going to go off down to the economic reasons now. This is a biggie. Economic. So in the North, there were more factories. The North had a lot of manufacturing buildings and businesses. There were factories. So people were paid to work. They had paid labor. In the South, on the other hand, it was more agricultural. So the South had the largest plantations. Plantations are large farms. The South had the largest plantations, and those plantations depended on slave labor. So because the South, their economy depended more on slavery, they were more willing to accept it as just a way of life rather than noticing that it was not okay to do. Okay, so let's go down. Let me pick a different color here. Oh, I'm missing some of my pens. Where did they go? They must have gotten knocked out somewhere. Well, let's see, one over here. I guess I'll pick this one. Let's see. Constitutional. This is a big one too. We talked about the Constitution, right? Constitutional. I'm going to go a little bit over there. That's a long word. So the North was good with the federal government. They wanted our country to have a strong national government. Okay? So the North thought that how the founding fathers set up our Constitution with a union of states, so the states kind of all worked together, and there was a strong national government. They were good with that. Now, the South, on the other hand, they felt very strongly about states' rights. So they felt that the national government should have less power. Government. And the states should be in charge of governing themselves and making their own decisions. Okay, we have one more. Okay, so last one. Let me see if y'all can see my color here. Last one is taxes. Ooh, taxes. We know taxes are always kind of a sour spot when we talk about what's going on. Remember, our country was so upset with Britain about taxing them. So the North, because the North had all of these factories where they made different items that they sold within the United States, they said, hey, we want a high tax on imports. Imports are things we bring into the country. So the North was like, we want to put a high tax on imports. Can you guess why? Okay. If you guessed that the factory's goods would look cheap then and more people would want to buy the stuff made by the factories in the North, you are correct. So the factory's goods seem cheap. More people will buy them. Now, the South, on the other hand, was like, I don't think so, North. We like the taxes low. We like that we can get these cheap items from other places. We want to have more choices to be able to get cheap items from other places. So we like these taxes as low. We don't want to raise the taxes. So these are some of the big causes. We're going to get more into talking about the big causes in more detail for the Civil War before we actually start diving in and talking about the Civil War. But these are some big causes. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.